Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, at the 26th Congress on Crime Prevention here in Cologne. You can see some of the city in the background, but there's very few of us actually here in Cologne. Overall, there's more than 1,200 participants in this Congress, but only 5 to 10 people are here, obviously sticking to all measures necessary during the pandemic. I'd like to say hello to our hosts, who are obviously well represented at this event, the Lord Mayor of the city of Cologne and the Ministerpräsident of the state of Nordrhein-Westphalia. Ms. Reker and Mr. Laschet are going to speak to us in a minute. Secondly, I would like to say hello to all those who have helped organize this Congress this year under pandemic conditions, which is a special situation. All of us are learning in this process as digitization proceeds, and it takes a lot more effort and a lot more willingness to learn than just giving a presentation on site. I would also like to say hello to our honorary guests. You can meet them in our foyer under a special button. I'm sorry I'm not mentioning you individually. And I'd like to say hello to all those, obviously, who are watching us today as participants on the YouTube channel, publicly, or possibly in the foyer, and possibly getting in touch with colleagues as we speak. Prevention for Orientation is the title of this year's Congress in Cologne, and you will see this in the Cologne Declaration that was published today. We find this very significant in lots of ways. Prevention for orientation during times of crisis, and prevention for orientation when it comes to designing the future. Prevention is also an important factor in rethinking current conditions. So this is the Cologne Declaration. I've got the switch here, but somehow it's not giving me a picture. You should be seeing the PowerPoint. Here we are. So I was going to say prevention works, and the Cologne Declaration, now we can see it, thank you. The Cologne Declaration takes up the subject. I'd be happy if you would participate in developing this text further. If you could discuss it, think about how to spread it over the next few weeks and months in the midst of everything that's still ahead of us, politically speaking. People have asked us in advance, what role does the Congress on Crime Prevention play in prevention? Are we in danger of just becoming an empty bubble, or can we actually change things? And we said we can definitely change things. We'd like to be a platform that is about networking and where we can have multiple opinions, as we do in prevention, because nothing only goes one way or can only be seen in one way. So as for the international part, the annual international forum, we're very happy about the different international speakers and are very grateful that so many ambassadors accredited in Germany, mostly in Berlin, have followed our invitation and are participating in this Congress. A warm welcome to all of you. Immanuel Kant said, what can we know? That's the interesting question. What can we really know? And I think if we only knew what we know about prevention, then it would be a different situation. We have a situation where research and practical experience are so obvious that we can calmly say, if we organize this well, if we take the right measures in prevention, then it is going to work and it is going to be worth it. Two very important things during these times. Does it work? Is it really effective based on evidence? And is it worth it? Can we pay for it, financially speaking? So what shall we do? That's a very interesting question. Karl Valentin once said, I would like to but I wasn't able to be allowed to. So what can we do, knowing that this is how it works? So, in my opinion, there's three things that are especially important right now. We have to work together. We have to focus and work together as individuals, as communities, as states, and as a country. We have to bring people together from different disciplines. We've learned a lot from the COVID crisis in this regard. We need to invest and we need to differentiate. I'm getting a sign that, okay, it is working again, thank you. We need to differentiate. That's the point. You all know this. If you only have a hammer, then every problem is going to be a nail to you. But prevention shows that we have different areas to think about, and we need different strategies for each of them. What can we hope for? We can hope for all these three central players to keep developing, and that it's not just politics, reality, and science working together, but we also have to get civil society to work more closely with us. So we can hope that what's working very well in Cologne, for example, the Lord Mayor is going to tell us about this, for local and regional centers of competency to be developed. I think this is a good strategy, and we have to tackle things early. We have to develop certain competencies much more consciously and much earlier at schools and in kindergartens. So that's not just a question of more money and more digitization, but it's also a question of other contents, of other points we need to focus on when we convey knowledge and attitudes. Last but not least, I'd like to name three things in connection with the Cologne Declaration and with our public viewing events on YouTube, etc. We'd like to develop election criteria for the next German elections, and we'd like to invite you as participants in this Congress. You know, you're not just going to go home and then it's over. You're going to participate until the end of September. And we'd like to invite you to develop these criteria for the elections. I'll talk about this more later with Mr. Laschet. We'd like to tell our politicians about this too, that we need to think more extensively about prevention subjects. And I think in the midterm, what we're still lacking in Germany is a national prevention strategy. In this sense, prevention is an attitude, a considerate attitude, and this has a lot to do with what happens on site. The most important locations for prevention are the communities. So I'd like to give the word to Ms. Reker, the Lord Mayor of Cologne, who has supported us very actively. I don't know whether our viewers know the basic law of Cologne. It is how it is, and it happens how it happens, and it's always gone well so far. We've had to make so many changes during the planning process of this Congress that I'm especially grateful to you for going along with it. Thank you so much for being here. I'll give the word to you. Thank you, Mr. Marks. Dear Mr. Laschet, dear Minister President, ladies and gentlemen, welcome at the 26th German Congress of Crime Prevention in Cologne this year. I'm very happy to greet you here because the basic law of Cologne unfortunately doesn't work all the time. It hasn't always worked out well. Prevention is a word that is associated with many different things with prevention measures, with precautions, with security, but really it's the courage to look at things and recognize them before they escalate. Especially for schools and in education, we are seeing now how important this is. Schools are more than learning spaces. They are important places for kids to socialize and practice living with others, the ability to face, accept, and overcome conflict, be considerate and helpful towards others, discipline, focus. All these things are best studied and learned with your peers. Especially now, homeschooling has showed us the challenges of teaching. We are learning to appreciate teachers and their jobs and their challenges they're facing in their daily lives. In Cologne, as in Nordrhein-Westfalen overall, at every point in time of the pandemic, we've tried to keep schools open as much as possible. And they have not been the main sites of infection. So we've tried to give families a break. We don't know yet what long-time consequences we are going to see in our children. We know our young people have been kept back, that things have been holding them back from learning things also socially, and that it's driving them apart further. But in Cologne, we have a good situation when it comes to the pandemic-based challenges. We have a lot of social institutions to recognize domestic violence early, to help children and young people. And we're using these institutions to help young people and children and their families. The school psychology service and teachers are showing us how to prevent violence, how to be courageous in daily life. And even if domestic violence has risen since the start of the pandemic, and we need to fix more than we would like to, it is better to actively work on prevention in this area. Also, homes for young people and volunteer institutions are an important support. Prevention is also the ability to use your intelligence and act now for a better, less complicated tomorrow. It is very important that we do not forget the education of our young people's hearts over teaching them knowledge-based content. So I'm very much looking forward to today's exchange, and I'm very happy to say hello to Ministerpräsident Armin Laschet, the patron of this event today. Dear Mr. Armin Laschet, I'm very happy to see you here today. I know you're supporting the communities, and for all of us, I hope this is going to be an interesting event with a lot of new input. Thank you so much, Lord Mayor Reker. I'd like to give the word to our patron, Mr. Armin Laschet. Obviously, we're cleaning up your spot here. So please take a book. Ms. Reker, Manfred Lutz from the Rhineland has signed this for you. We're going to hear his speech tomorrow. Ministerpräsident Armin Laschet, go ahead. Dear Mr. Marks, dear Ms. Reker, dear participants in this Congress, in the name of the government of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, I'd like to greet you here at the 26th Congress on Crime Prevention, here at the Rhine metropolis of Cologne. Since its founding in 1995, this is the most well-established forum on crime prevention, and it's the seventh time we're holding it in North Rhine-Westphalia, this time online, obviously, due to the pandemic, but You've already done this in Kassel last year, and you have had a very successful online event with great effect and reach. Mr. Marks, the event in Cologne this year will be successful again, I'm sure. Preventing crime is one of the most important tasks we are facing. First of all, because successful prevention means fewer victims and less suffering. And that's obviously the most important gain. But there's more to it than that. Each day, it brings us a greater sense of safety. It prevents people from losing their path. And in this sense, it can also prevent a lot of misfortune. That we will need less police, less court work, less people going to prison. So prevention saves resources of all kinds. Crime prevention is not solely to be tackled by the state. Crime prevention can only work if government and non-government institutions and people work together. Large parts of the population need to participate in this process. The title of the 26th Congress, Prevention for Orientation, Planning, Training, Exchange, reflects this interdisciplinary approach. The title also allows us to see how many facets and approaches there are to prevention. During these times, the issue of COVID-19 is obviously part of it. At first sight, you might think that we need more crime prevention. We need less crime prevention during the pandemic. The police crime statistics show that during the COVID year 2020, it was the lowest level of crimes since 1993 because people stay home more often. Especially robberies have gone down, but also pickpockets have been less active, and there have been fewer violent attacks. But the virus has not done away with crime. It has only changed it. First of all, I'm thinking of the victims of domestic violence. The Lord Mayor, Ms. Reker, mentioned this. Children or partners or old people are often victims of violence. After the Ministry of Internal Affairs in the state has published a report on domestic violence for the first time, we know that in 2020 this number has risen by 7.7%, especially with these crimes. We can obviously assume that a lot more has happened than we know. Also, during the pandemic, we are seeing a lot more crime moving from reality into cyberspace, and the victims and the damage done in this area are not virtual but real. This is especially true for the spread of child pornography on the internet that in the entire country has risen by more than 50% last year. There's also a lot of growth in 2020 in cybercrime. Once again, the pandemic is accelerating this trend because during the pandemic, cyber criminals are using people's insecurity and fear to enrich themselves at the cost of their victims. There's protest movements that we have to watch very closely during the pandemic. There's all kinds of people participating in these protests, uniting all kinds of worldviews, opponents of vaccines, esoterics, Reichsbürger, right-wing extremists. It's a strange mix that shows nationalist German flags next to rainbow flags. And obviously we have to allow freedom of opinion, but anti-Semitism, racism and hatred around this discussion on Corona is unacceptable. And especially worrying is that in 2020, the COVID year, we have reached a high in politically motivated crime. In the past week, the Minister Seehofer of the Internal has announced the numbers and has warned of people becoming more violent. Once again, we need prevention, not only through the government and the media, but through every individual's efforts. The virus has not only changed our professional and our private lives, it hasn't just changed congresses like this one, it has also changed crime in its proportions. It is clear that prevention has to find answers to these changes. More than that, prevention has to be more flexible and creative than the criminals. It has to be one step ahead of them. And the range of subject at this Congress shows that this is exactly what the Congress is about, to get one step ahead. The state of Nordrhein-Westphalia is supporting you. We're taking the subject of prevention very seriously. We've developed a lot of successful concepts. Kurvekriegen is one of these projects, trying to help young people, and also radical Islamic crime prevention programs. We have a campaign against cybercrime. Make Your Password Strong is the title for it. So we're also actively fighting cybercrime. We are working on making schools in socially disadvantaged areas stronger, investing more in them, giving them more money and better equipment. This is also a long-term prevention measure, because education and job perspectives make real careers possible, and while preventing criminal careers. A famous criminologist of the late 19th, early 20th century, the Frenchman Alexandre Nakassagne, always finished his speeches with the sentence, "Every society has the crime it deserves." Maybe we could also say every society has the crime prevention it deserves. Thank you so much for working on this issue here in Germany and for giving us wonderful crime prevention. Thank you for doing this work and organizing this Congress and preventing a lot of pain and damage. The fruit of such labor are growing while we cannot see them. You can rarely prove that they're there, but that's the meaning, that's the whole point of prevention that makes it so valuable, that the damage is not even done. On this note, I wish you from Cologne, from the Rhine River, a successful and wonderful Congress and great days of learning. Thank you so much, Minister President and our patron this year. It is good to know to have a high-profile politician like you understand and support crime prevention. So if I look at your work, it contains a lot of things that look at the future and makes me feel very positive. So we'll be with you as you start your position. So please take a copy of Manfred Lütz's book as well.